Welcome to Discovering with Dr. Deb. Our last season, we were discovering the Enneagram with Dr. Deb, and it was packed with a lot of information while also being a lot of fun to talk about and explore the Enneagram and why we do what we do. So go back and check out those episodes if you haven't seen them already. Here we are in season 2, and I'm going to be focusing on trauma and using EMDR therapy as a tool to help process trauma. My co-host for this season is psychologist Dr. Christy Sprouse from Austin, Texas. She has traveled all over the world to provide EMDR in humanitarian efforts, and she has also trained clinicians and providers in EMDR therapy. So get ready, let's dive right in and talk about trauma. Hello, welcome to this episode. I'm here with Dr. Christy Sprouse, and we are talking more about trauma, EMDR, and all things related.
That's right.
So in this episode, we're going to talk a little about depersonalization, derealization, and dissociation, and what those have to do and how they affect us and impact our bodies. So I wanted to share a study. This is from the Mayo Clinic, and this is a study of a survey of 2,440 physicians. So I work a lot with physicians and just the issues that they're coming into practice with is a lot of it trauma that's happened at the workplace. Some of it happened in residency and other things like that. But the recent study says 38.6% increase in mean emotional exhaustion compared with 2020. And what's even bigger of a jump is a 60.7% increase in mean depersonalization score compared with 2020. That's huge, huge. So depersonalization, what that really is, it occurs when you persistently or repeatedly have the feeling that you're observing yourself from outside your body, kind of that out-of-body experience, you know. So sometimes if they're working in an emergency department and people come in, they kind of observe themselves from outside their body. They see them working on the patient or things like that. And it's not too different from dissociation, but dissociation, Dr. Christy, you've kind of talked about before, like we're all born, just to kind of normalize it.
Yeah.
We're all born dissociating.
Yes.
And so talk a little about that.
Okay. So I was really kind of stunned when I was doing some research, and I discovered that when we're born, we have 3 ways of taking care of ourselves so that we're not overstimulated. Here we are in this warm cocoon, and all of a sudden we come out to this world. And so we need to protect ourselves. It's loud, it's bright, it's uncomfortable. So we dissociate immediately, right? It's a natural, normal phenomenon.
Right.
We dissociate, we do thumb sucking, and then we can also like recoil, right? So if somebody approaching you and it's just too much, you'll tend to pull away. You watch little babies doing that. So I like to say that so that people know this is normal. We all dissociate. Not only that, and I can talk about the dissociative thing that I talk about with my patients, but
it's kind of on a spectrum.
Yeah, it's on a spectrum.
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. That's what I think about actually every disorder that there is. I really do. I'm kind of like, well, you're somewhere on here.
Right.
And we can benefit from being some parts of all these different types of disorders too. For dissociation, and when you're working with people who have been traumatized, they often don't know that they dissociate. So I explained to them, first of all, I worked on this continuum. But one of the things that I like to do, and we all do who do EMDR, is that we find out how dissociative somebody is who's walking into your office, and so that you have a lay of the land of how is this process going to go. I describe to them what dissociation looks like, okay? So this is, at this end, it's the baby being born dissociating naturally. You go up a couple of steps, to the next order or level of dissociation would be daydreaming, when you just look out the window and you just kind of go away for a minute because you're just so interested in that tree or whatever, but you just kind of numb out.
Just kind of lose yourself in time for a little bit.
Exactly.
Right.
And it feels really good. So
right.
Nothing wrong with it. We all do it. The next level is on the continuum. is driving home from work. Maybe you've had a really long, hard day and you're driving home and you get home and you go, how did I get here? I don't even remember
if I had stopped at the stoplight. Yes. Right? Or were the lights red or green?
Exactly. Yeah. Or where I am at this moment or whatever. And again, normal. Okay, normal.
Very normal.
And because the brain's really adept at sort of taking over. So go into the next phase. The next thing would be where you pop out of your body and you're watching the action go down. A lot of people talk to me about this happening, especially in I keep mentioning car accidents, but this is where my data comes from. And they're watching what's going on down here and they're not in their bodies. Or sometimes even when they're here with me in the room, they might be talking about something that's highly stressful. So they kind of pop out and they are in the corner kind of looking down at what we're doing and talking about.
And that's really a lot what these physicians are experiencing with the depersonalization. So it's somewhere on that continuum.
Yes.
Right.
Okay. And it's still not pathological.
Right.
It is. Yeah. Right. It is our brains taking care of us.
Right. Protecting us.
Right? Exactly. So depersonalization, derealization, all of that, pop outside your body. And it happening somewhat consistently, protecting us. Yay for that. Then the next step up the line would be something like PTSD, where you become more hypervigilant. You might have flashbacks. That one's a whole independent thing in and of itself. Beyond that might be like slightly dissociating, and we call it, DDNOS. And that just means that maybe there are aspects of yourself that you can identify as, and this happens a lot to people, like I have a little 13-year-old rebellious girl inside of me, and then I remember myself being about 3, and I lived abroad when I was a kid, and so we'd have to go get shots. And I'm the youngest of 5. They were all crying, okay? But I didn't. I had my cowboy boots on, and I said, I'll take the shots, and they're all crying, whatever. But
her 8 wing came out. That's
a fact.
That's in the other season 1 Enneagram. She'll have to check that out.
Yeah. But I can call to mind those different aspects of myself, the rebellious teenager, this and that.
Yes.
And so people might slip into sort of different age brackets based on their life history. So if I need to be really tough, I put my little boots on and I go. So anyway, that's the next level. Then the highest level of dissociation is when somebody actually, it's called dissociative identity disorder. And this is all dissociation, you guys. And I think it's brilliant. When something happens for them, they can fractionate it, right? They can break it down into manageable pieces in their mind.
So that they can handle.
It, exactly.
Right.
And if you ask me, that's brilliant.
Yeah. Yeah. It's brilliant that the body and the brain does that.
On its own. I know.
Right.
I couldn't agree with you more.
Right.
And so then what I like to know is where are you on this continuum?
Right. Where are they at on it?
Where are you?
Right.
Because then that gives you so much information.
Right. But when you look at this 60.7% increase in depersonalization for physicians.
Yes.
2440, almost 2,500 physicians. Like that is huge.
Yes.
And a lot of the things that contribute to that, of course, it was the increase in the emotional exhaustion too. So exhaustion would contribute to that.
Yes.
And just the stress of the jobs, living in a pandemic. This has been since 2020, so it's recent. All of that, is, even though it's not unhealthy or pathological, it's alarming nonetheless.
Yes, that's right.
And they can't sustain that.
That's correct.
Yeah. But I think some professions, and medical community is one of them, they aren't I think there's more of a stigma about counseling because they don't want to be practicing, impaired. Not that this means they're impaired. And that's, I think, part of why we want to have this conversation. It doesn't mean they're impaired, but you can't keep clicking on all cylinders like that.
Well, I think about that song, Running on Empty.
Right. Oh, yeah, because we're 70s.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. that's exactly right. You can't keep running on empty.
You can't.
Right.
You can't. You're going to fall flat on your face. You're going to do something wrong. You're going to make mistakes.
Right.
You're not going to be, when you are, another word would be jacked up in that way, really quick to anger, really, just a kind of a spark plug, really.
Yeah.
For any,
yeah.
immediate.
Well, and it's like I had a client last week that just said, my triggered self would have done this, and so that's the whole thing, like quick to anger, that's being triggered.
Yep.
And so it's so important to then get help, especially when you notice, when you can notice that you're that far along on the continuum, it's time to and so EMDR will help calm the nervous system. Like it lets it out of the body so that, good stuff can kind of come in. And so I know we assess where they're at. And then what would your next step be working with folks that report this kind of a depersonalization or dissociation?
Well, this comes in the next phase, that what we would be doing is in history taking, I guess you should say. They just come in, we talk a lot about what's going on in their lives, why are they coming to therapy now, what is their goal to be in therapy, and then we guide our work towards what's the most disturbing thing that's happening to them. And if they're noticing this type of behavior,
right,
it can be upsetting if they have hasn't happened before. And I gotta say, it's just this pandemic has really traumatized the world. And speaking of my docs, I love working with my docs, but they're not just the nature of what they do. I mean, that in and of itself is difficult. In addition, though, there are a lot of people leaving medicine. Yes.
And so that adds work to the already emotionally exhausted physicians that are there. And that doesn't help. Add to that fact just the nature of, corporate medicine and how those things are going. I won't get into all of that. I don't know the ins and outs of all of that. But that adds another element of stress for these physicians. And so, if you want anybody to be emotionally healthy in the world, like we need our frontline workers.
That's right.
To be able to process this stuff in a healthy way so that their brains can protect them, moving forward, so they can take care of us.
Yeah, well, that's exactly right.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a selfish thing, but my heart really hurts for that when you see a statistic like that. Like that's...
Well, it's so indicative of our trying times.
Yeah.
And I worked with hospitals during the pandemic and frontliners a lot. And, so it's such a multi-layered thing, because they are also humans walking around in a human world that has COVID in it. They can't go home and stay in the house so that they can protect their children and their family. There was so many levels, and then people dying at an
alarming rate.
Right.
And hospitals were full.
People are quitting.
People
have had it. They have had it, but they feel compelled to keep going. And
the other element too, for a lot of physicians, they outsource a lot of domestic responsibilities. They may have somebody that comes in and cleans their house. They may have somebody that comes in that helps with the children. They have people so that they can do the work that they do and the hours that they do it. When they're working in a hospital setting, they don't have an 8 to 5 job. So when the pandemic hit and you cut out all of that outsourced help because you don't have people coming into your home, that added, because those responsibilities still have to be taken care of. The children still have to be cared for and gotten to school or whatever it is. So all of that just added another element of stress, which is, I think, what played into that emotional exhaustion piece too.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Suddenly you have 24-hour children and you have to figure out how to do that and how to get to work and do all of that.
Yeah.
I mean, it has been intense, and it saddens me to hear that statistic, and thinking about okay, how are we going to help? This is the planet, you guys. I'm thinking about really. I mean, physicians, absolutely. Even just daily living for the pandemic itself. That's a whole nother topic.
I know. We could do another
Really,
episode just on
we
that.
Sure could.
Yeah,
We sure could.
we could.
But going back to the question you asked, well, then what do I do then?
Mm-hmm.
Then we decide what's going to be most important. What's disturbing them the most? Why are they there? What is their goal? And then I create a treatment plan based on what I know about them and what their desires are, and look at what we might positively focus on. And then, I do the rest of what I do, but we've got it nailed down, and I will be doing things, again, titrating this work according to how well they can take it. So there's a lot of information to talk about in that regard. And I don't know how deep to go into it.
I have really found most of mine want to do the most recent trigger or stressor.
That's right.
And that's really a good place to start. Would you agree?
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Especially in that population.
Yes.
And that's not the way we train people to do EMDR, you guys. Just know that it is for the advanced person who does those types of things, and that they make those decisions. But nonetheless, it's absolutely indicated. Something we need to do to take this off their nervous system so that they can go out and begin to function immediately.
Right.
And so we have tricks to the trade.
Right.
To get that accomplished.
Right. And we want to lower that depersonalization and the dissociation that's going on. Right. Yeah. But I don't think that's often talked about because there's some shame to it. Like I've done something wrong, or I'm defective, or there's something wrong with me. And, nobody wants a physician working impaired, but they don't either. And they don't want to think or have anybody think that they are.
That's right.
So it's not talked about, and it needs to be talked about, because if you don't talk about it, we can't help your brain heal.
Yeah.
And help you heal.
That's right. And it's very interesting. I also have worked a lot with physicians, and I found that different physicians were more interested in hopping on the bandwagon for EMDR. My surgeons at different, I don't know, it's just kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Like who's interested. Maybe that's because they're like precise, and they, I don't know what would be the draw there, but everybody's welcome.
Everybody's welcome.
Yeah.
There's room for everybody at the table.
Yeah. All disciplines.
All disciplines are welcome. Yes. Well, thanks for talking with me about that today. I like I said, I really think these things need to be talked about and normalized.
Yes.
It's like you said, it's not pathological. It's normal. It's everybody experiences it.
Yeah.
It's just to what level. And when it gets to a certain level, then definitely we need to help alleviate that. So,
and that's the thing, we can help.
Right.
We have something that really works. And you don't have to live that way. Right. And you don't have to be ashamed of it.
Right. And for our doctors, you don't have to leave medicine.
Yeah, that too.
Yeah, we want that to be a decision that is made from a healthy brain.
Yes.
Right, not a triggered brain.
That's right.
Right.
It's beautiful.
So, all right. Well, thanks for joining us for this episode, and we'll look forward to seeing you next time. If this content has been helpful to you, I'd appreciate it if you would please rate the podcast, post it, and share it on social media. And also post a review. If you'd like to get in contact with me, my phone is 479-561-7600, or email Dr. Deborah at anchoredhopecounseling.net or Dr. Deborah at drdebfordoctors.com. Our website at www.anchoredhopecounseling.net has some useful information, and you can also reach out to me through the website. Remember, you are enough just the way you are, and you are loved.